free webinar today. ChatGPT for Educators, practical approaches to lesson planning. And I'm just going to give you a little intro to us if you don't know who we are. So I'm Vicky Sadler, and I've just really quickly changed my job title today because I've started a new position at Tutor Trust today. So I'm Director of Tutor Recruitment and Development here at Tutor Trust, and I'm a former primary school teacher and senior leader. So for those of you who don't know who we are, Tutor Trust are an award-winning charity with amazing tutors focused on setting pupils up for success across the north of England. We are coming to you live from Manchester today, Greater Manchester. It's not raining for a change, so all good. As a charity, every penny of Tutor Trust is used to support hundreds of young people every day to achieve their potential. So what we do is we work directly with primary, secondary schools, as well as colleges across the north of England to provide small group tuition in maths, English and science. And we've worked with almost 30,000 young people since we started in 2011 and had really great results. So our tuition is entirely free of charge to parents and carers. So we're not just here to listen, we want this to be an interactive experience. So do feel free to engage with us using the Q&A function, which should be along the bottom somewhere, or chat in the chat box as Laura invited you to do. And Laura, who's just introduced the session, is our external communications and marketing manager and is here to facilitate our webinar and ensure your questions are answered. And we'll have some time for that at the end. And as Laura said, 24 hours after the webinar, we'll be sending you the recording of the session and the slides as well. So don't feel like you've got to write loads of things down. And then I've also got to introduce my co-host today, who is my fabulous colleague, Matt Hainsworth, who is a Tutoring Plus Coordinator here at Tutor Trust. And Matt is a really experienced tutor and has a real keen interest in AI and was involved in our latest AI project with Bain and Company. So I'll just put myself on mute for a second and hand over to Matt to introduce himself, say hi, and tell you a little bit more about this. And Matt, you'll have to just tell me when you want me to move your slides on, okay?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for the introduction, Vicky. Hi, everyone. I'm Matt. I'm part of the Tutoring Plus team at Tutor Trust. I joined began as a tutor, then a full-time tutor, and now I'm a coordinator with the Tutoring Plus team, as I said. When I joined as a full-time tutor, I took part in the Bain Company pilot program, which ran sort of October, November last year, with around 40 teachers and tutors across primary and secondary settings, and a range of subjects across the UK. And that was a really interesting pilot. Through that, we got to test ChatGPT 4, which is the premium version of ChatGPT, test its capabilities in lesson planning, identifying practical strengths and weaknesses, basically with the aim of producing an AI teaching guide for educators, which is on the bottom of that slide there, teaching with ChatGPT, and that's freely available online as well. Now, as you can see from the slide, the test group found AI to be seriously useful in creating customized lesson plans. We found it to save time and increase efficiency of the sort of lesson planning process. And yeah, it was sort of a way to create more specialized lesson plans with less effort and less time, essentially. Vicky, if you take us to the next slide.
Yeah, Matt, do you want me to just do a quick show of that teaching with ChatGPT slide?
Defo, yeah.
Perfect. Okie dokie. Oh, she says, here we go. So it just looks like this. And what we really liked about it, Matt, wasn't it, that it's got these, are you new to ChatGPT, help you get started, already got an account, get stuck in, and it's got some case studies and lots of really practical ideas in there as well. So when you get the slides after the session, you'll be able to click on our hyperlinks and have a really good look through those. I'll go back onto your slides for you, Matt.
No, that's excellent. I mean, it's yeah, I would definitely recommend giving that a look. It's really, really user friendly, as Vicky was saying. Yeah, for whatever level of sort of experience you have with ChatGPT. And it is a ChatGPT specific guidance, that is worth saying. But definitely worth giving a look. Vicky, I'll hand back to you now.
Brilliant, thanks, Matt. So we ran the online session a few months ago, actually, with Bain and Company. It was about 3 months ago, and we invited teachers, tutors, and educators to come along. And we wanted to follow up that session today with something that was a little bit more practical. It kind of outlined the website that we've just shown you briefly there. But we wanted to give you some of the tools that we've used that we think are going to be really practical for you to improve your lesson planning. So the aims of today's session are on the screen there to introduce some practical AI tools for better lesson planning, show you how it saves time without compromising quality, and share some of the applications that simplify processes and improve results for educators. And just to say, we're talking about ChatGPT here, but we've also sort of at the same time as this, I know Matt and I have been using Google Gemini as well and looking at the differences and similarities between the two. And I think when we're talking about the prompts and things like that we've been using with ChatGPT here, it's interchangeable with Google Gemini as well, and probably other AI applications that you've come across. There's loads of AI tools out there that you might also be exploring. So I think some of the prompts and the ideas that we give you, you can apply to that as well. Okay, Matt, over to you.
Fab. So here's a quick outline for today's session. So we're going to begin with a quick sort of AI disclaimer, word of caution, before jumping straight in to our 3 practical applications, custom instructions and prepare, adaptive instruction, and assessment for learning. And then we'll finish off the session today with a Q&A and a chance to try some of those practical applications, which is why we sort of suggest having ChatGPT open during this session. So a quick word of caution, and this is actually again from the Bain guidance. This is more general for generative AI, you know, it's quite applicable throughout. Do's check output carefully for inaccuracies and bias. It's very important. It's prone to them, so we've got to be aware of that, and then we can sort of preempt any inaccuracies or be aware that there might be some. Break requests down into simple questions. Ask for more options than you need. That's quite general. If you're thinking sort of resources in the context of lesson planning, when you go out and look for a resource, chances are the first one that you find isn't going to be the one that you use. It's the same goes for AI. Ask for more than you need, and then you'll be able to hone down to exactly what you want. If we look at the don'ts, don't enter sensitive or personal data. That's a super, super important one, obviously from a safeguarding perspective and GDPR. Do not rely on ChatGPT for factual information. Always sort of double check or have your own subject knowledge. And don't use ChatGPT to do calculations. It's a bit iffy. With very simple maths and things, it'll do well, but I tried planning a lesson once on trigonometry and it really fell off. So it's more a sense of finding its boundaries, finding where its strengths lie, and that comes through practice and practical application.
Well, thanks, Matt. So first of all, we need you to think about what we actually type into our AI tool, ChatGPT or Google Gemini. And the first thing we can do is provide ChatGPT with a set of information about how we'd like it to answer any request that we provide. It's a bit annoying, isn't it, when you're having to sort of say the same things over and over again. So custom instructions come in here, and this is really a way to empower you to shape ChatGPT's responses according to your preferences. So you're basically crafting a tailored experience every time you engage with ChatGPT. If you update your custom instructions, ChatGPT will apply those to each conversation that you have with it, and this saves time on typing repetitive content and helps you to get tailored responses from ChatGPT. So let me show you how I've done this. So I'm going to cancel it so you can see where I'm coming from. I've logged into ChatGPT. I've just got the free version. And if you can see at the bottom left here, my name, Vicky S, I've clicked on it and I've gone to customize ChatGPT. And basically, you've got two boxes here where you can type things in. And what I quite like is when you swipe across, it gives you some thought starters of what to write in your boxes. So I've set mine up as if I'm an English teacher. The first one is, what would you like ChatGPT to know about you to provide better responses? So I'm an English teacher. I teach year 7 and 8 in England. The pupils have lots of gaps in their knowledge, and we're thinking about the sort of post-COVID, legacy, really. I prefer to use vocabulary that follows the English national curriculum. Don't forget, we're going to get Americanized content if we're not careful. I teach a mixed ability class of 30 students, and my aim is to fill my students' gaps in knowledge so they can pass their exams. Also in there, I've put, it's very important I build relationships with my students as they value consistency and support. And then in terms of how I'd like ChatGPT to respond, in that second box, I've said use language that's appropriate to year 7 and 8 students. I think that's really important that you think about the pupils that you're working with. Make explanations as clear and straightforward as possible, and always respond with English UK spellings. Now that, for me, that last one doesn't always work as well as I want it to, and sometimes I'll have to remind ChatGPT when it's given me a response, but it's not too much of a hassle to just say, okay, that's great, but rewrite that in UK British spellings. So let me go back to the slides and we'll have a look at the next part of that. So you want to set up your custom instructions before you're actually doing any other prompt engineering, really. So those are going to stick with you for every prompt that you give it. And then the next thing that we want to do is think about when we're typing something into ChatGPT that we're going to be really specific with that prompt. It's called prompt engineering. And while we're doing this, while you're listening, there's a little suggestion there for you. If you want to share in the chat any custom instructions that have worked well for you, that would be really great as well, so that other people can have a look at those. And I'd love to be able to add some more to mine as well, get some of your ideas. So if you want to type into the chat any that you've used, that would be really great. So this acronym that we've been using for our prompt engineering is called PREPARE. And I've got this from someone called the AI educator online, whose work is really brilliant. If you've not come across, he's called Dan. I'll show you his LinkedIn page in a second or two. If you've not come across him, he's a really great person to follow on LinkedIn, and also I'll show you his website right at the end as well. So just to show you, I did a little test here last week. I basically gave a prompt, a really, really simple prompt. And I said, I'm teaching year 7 English lesson about Midsummer Night's Dream and metaphors. I need a learning objective for this lesson. And as you can see, the top answer that it gave me is without any custom instructions. And then the bottom answer here is with custom instructions. So we had a bit of Americanized spelling in there, in the ones without. We had a bit more specificity. It was a bit more specific in that learning objective when I'd given it those custom instructions. Obviously, this is a really simple prompt that I've put in, and I want to show you how to improve your prompts, as I say, with this acronym called PREPARE. So let's have a look at it on the next slide. So this is actually from Dan Fitzpatrick's page. And again, when you get these slides afterwards, you'll be able to click on this little pink text here and you'll be able to be taken to the examples. So in order to get ChatGPT or any other generative AI platforms to provide really useful answers, you need to develop your prompt engineering skills, asking well-crafted questions or providing clear instructions so that you can tap into its immense capacity to generate accurate and relevant content. So just really simply, that PREPARE stands for prompt. So introducing what you want, giving it a role, telling it who it is. Is it a marketing manager? Is it a director of a company? Is it a year 10 teacher? whatever it is. Being really explicit is the E. Setting parameters for the answer. I don't want a 4-page essay. I need this to be bullet points because this is going to be a homework task or something like that. And then these last few are something that Dan's added recently, which are, and I found this really useful, then asking the AI to give you some follow-up questions and to rate the response it's given to me, and also to appeal to its emotions as well. So we tried to do that a little bit in the custom instructions by the whole building relationships bit. So really interesting. I'll show you an example here. So prepared my prompt using prepare here to show you what I might get from ChatGPT. So I don't want to read it to you. You can have a quick look there. But I'm basically talking about teaching some science to a group of year 9/10 students. And I've given it some really, really specific prompts there. Just drawing your attention to the ARE at the end. I've said, ask me some questions in bullet points to enhance your understanding of the topic, and for the ChatGPT to give me a scale of 1 to 10, how clear they think the explanation is, and highlight any specific phrases or examples that contribute to the clarity or areas that may need improvement. That's worked quite well for me. And then that bit that we talked about there with the emotions, ensure that you connect with the reader in a human way. So bearing that in mind, I'm going to show you the example that ChatGPT gave to me. And you can see it's pretty engaging. It's got a nice question to start. It's concise. It's written in bullets. I think this would be attractive to students because they've not got to sort of trawl through loads of text. And I quite like the language it's used as well. And again, you know, as Matt said, we'd have to be checking that, fact checking it, making sure it was right. What I then did after this was I asked ChatGPT on a scale of 1 to 10 how clear it thought this explanation was, so that we're sort of building on our prompts and feeding back to AI, because, you know, Matt will talk to you about this in a little while later, but very rarely do we sort of accept the first answer it gives. We like to iterate our prompts and make it push further, and that's where it works really well. So ChatGPT told me it would rate this explanation about an 8. It said the step-by-step breakdown and relatable examples like comparing leaves to solar panels make it the process understandable. And then it said, but I could improve the clarity by providing more detail on the role of chlorophyll and its importance in photosynthesis. So I said, right, okay, that's great. Now, can you do it? So I then got my second iteration of this, and then I had another look at it and tweaked a few things. So you can see, you can really get to a point where you've got something, you know, that's quite useful. Okay, so that's that one. That's custom instructions and prepare. I'm going to hand over to Matt now to talk you through an example where we've used it for adaptive instruction.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Vicky. So looking at the second practical application of AI, adaptive instruction, first thing I want you to do is have a look at those questions on the slide. Have a think about the young people that you work with. How many unique needs or interests do you have to adapt your lessons for each week? How long does it take, and is it even feasible? Post some comments in the chat about that, about your sort of experiences, and we're going to see if AI could maybe streamline any of those processes for you. So adaptive instruction is what we call our tailored approach to lesson planning. Literally, it's adapting your instruction based on your students' needs and interests. Okay, so we generally split this into 3 categories. And if you're a tutor with us, these might ring a bell to you. So the first is support, and that's including sort of opportunities to scaffold struggling students' learning. Examples can include modeled answers, prompts and sentence starters, concrete resources, tiered work, things like that. The next would be stretch, providing opportunities for more able students to push themselves. Examples might include a set of instructions or student as a teacher, spot the mistake, problem-solving questions and real-world examples. And the last would be we call just additional needs. So this is adapting activities to be as accessible, engaging, and effective for your students' unique needs as possible. So within my team on Tutoring Plus, this is especially applicable. We often work with students who benefit more from sort of one-to-one provision and are often in sort of alternative provision settings or even in home. So really meeting students where they're at is our absolute bread and butter. So examples here might include adapting questions to students' interests. For example, I had a student who was really into rugby and hair and beauty. So our first activity was naturally figuring out the finances of setting up a salon. That would be an example of that. Translating vocab for EAL students, including opportunities to move around and be active for a high energy student, creating games around topics to sort of better engage students who maybe are not that engaged. Making adaptations for each of these students can be very, very time consuming, as I'm sure many of you know, and can become unfeasible when you've got more than sort of one or two groups of young people. And that's really where the AI comes in to streamline the process. So the way I would say it, AI is for doing legwork. It's not a replacement for you. It's not a shortcut. It's not a replacement for your knowledge or your expertise. It's simply streamlining time-consuming elements to allow you to create better lesson plans quicker. And all the knowledge that you would normally put into a lesson plan instead becomes context for the AI. Okay, so you're going to guide the AI through your prompts and through the custom instructions that Vicky's been talking about. And then we're going to go through the sort of iterative feedback process as well, until it reaches an output that you are happy with. Okay, can I have the next slide, please? So the way we're going to do that is through three main ways. Kind of alluded to them a bit. Custom instructions, detailed structured prompts, and clear constructive feedback. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on custom instructions. Vicky's covered that very well. But if we think about it in a more general sense, it's really about giving context, giving the AI context on your role, your position, and what the task is that you're giving it, right? So again, we're talking the task is lesson planning. The role is a tutor or a teacher or an educator in some way. So let's sort of give it a role play. If we think about it from an AI's point of view, planning a session for a group of year sixes on fractions is fairly straightforward, right? There's loads of concrete resources online, there's methods and model answers, and the content itself is relatively basic, right? If, though, we're then told that one of our students has ADHD or has only been speaking English for a year or has missed loads of school and is working at a year 3 level, or maybe all of the above, it completely changes that lesson planning task, which is why the context is so vital. It's really the difference between your students being able to access their work or not. And as we all know, that has a load of knock-on effects on engagement, behavior, and attainment. So prompt engineering, as I said, I'm going to sort of skip over the custom instructions. Vicky's covered that. The one thing I will add that I've seen, and I think it actually might be from Dan Fitzpatrick as well, is that can be quite useful to include in custom instructions. I've seen it included in prompts, is a mention about pedagogy. Literally telling the AI it's an expert on pedagogy or a specific area of pedagogy, it can be really valuable because it tells the AI that that is something it needs to consider when it's generating its answer. So food for thought there. If we think about the more sort of student-specific context, though, that's going to come in prompts. That's not going to be the same for everything, so you can't put it in a custom instruction. So the way we go about structuring prompts, as Vicky mentioned earlier, is prompt engineering. And there's loads of resources online advising the best ways to go about this. Generally, as you can see from the slide, they're broken down into roughly the same sort of key areas. So giving the AI perspective on the prompt, explaining the task in simple terms, setting parameters on the task, explaining how you would like the AI to answer. Other common features, again, we've seen it in Prepare, can include asking the AI to rate its own output in terms of confidence, giving examples of the output you want, but they're not always relevant. As you can also see on the slide, there's loads of different types of prompts, different sort of styles, depending on the task. Looking just purely from a lesson planning perspective, we fall mostly under the question or instruction prompts. From the Bain guide, from the Bain pilot even, something we learned was that asking AI to generate the entirety of a lesson plan at once isn't very effective. But if you break it down, ask it for either an outline of a whole lesson plan or for individual parts of the lesson plan in detail, that's a lot more effective. And they could work hand in hand, asking for an outline and then building it up through an iterative process. As you can see from the prompt here, again, on the slide, details about the student's year group, working level are really useful to include, as well as how long the session is, what subject or topics you might want to cover, any ideas or activities you already have in mind. You can see from that prompt, I already had an icebreaker activity that I knew I wanted to do, and I gave the AI an idea of how long I thought that would take. And you know, the specificity here, always, you sort of have to reiterate the caveat of pupil privacy. You don't need to be telling the AI, you know, the student's name or like how specifically old they are or anything like that. It's more like year 10 and working at year 3 or a grade or something like that. As you can see here, this is the response to that prompt. And it wasn't the best prompt in the world, but it also wasn't a terrible one. But you can see from the slide, it has made an inaccuracy. It's assumed that 1.25 hours for the session is 1 hour and 25 minutes, because it's then calculated me as needing 55 to 65 minutes left. So this is an example of really needing to look at the output, right? It's made an error. My timings for the lesson would be off if I just used that output straight away. I've also learned here that ChatGPT doesn't like time in decimals. So in future, I'll just say 1 hour, 15 minutes. I'll be super explicit with it. So it's only through these inaccuracies that you learn to preempt them. So it's by no means bad to get errors, but just something to be conscious of. And obviously this is a decent output. It's not a finished lesson plan, but that's not what I asked it for. And it's ready to be fleshed out with further prompts. So this is actually an output I'm quite happy with as a first response. Okay. Let's move to the next slide. Fab. And that brings us into the multi-turn conversations and the proper iterative process. Questions we need to be asking are, do the adaptations seem like they would be effective? Can you see your students engaging? Does the lesson still meet the LOs? Is the output at a standard you are happy with, right? If it's not, you need to regenerate the answer or prompt it further using really specific feedback. It's important that even when it doesn't meet your first expectations, and it won't to begin with, you don't just bin it off. You've got or start a fresh chat. Stay with it, stick with it, and have that conversation, making sure that you are giving it feedback, because that's the only way that it learns. So one of the other uses of one of the other options, sorry, for feedback is on your most recent response from AI, you get these buttons at the bottom, the sort of circle one. It looks a bit like undo, it's not, it means regenerate. And even when you hit regenerate, you don't lose your first answer. you can sort of flick between them, almost like slides. And the thumbs down next to it is a thumbs down, right? It's not super detailed feedback, but it tells the AI, this wasn't what I wanted. So you can also see here, this prompt on the screen, that is my follow-up prompt from the output that I got before. I went on to prompt it further and further. I asked it for vocab for the lesson, for the outline, sorry, that it provided me. I asked it to regenerate activities and individual parts of the lesson. And I actually went on to guide it further, just sort of through my own ideas. This was for a student who was really interested in business. So we used McDonald's as a case study of a successful business. And AI sort of adapted that lesson plan outline that it had around this McDonald's case study. Where's my slides gone? And our last bit, if you're doing lots of similar tasks using AI, use the same chat for all of them. As I said, it learns from your feedback, it learns from your further prompts. The chats almost act like individual models of AI. So each new chat in ChatGPT is almost like a fresh version of ChatGPT. So if you're wanting to plan all your maths lessons, say, use the same chat, and it will learn best how to develop maths lessons. Same for English, same for different year groups. It can go completely the sort of personal side and be like an expert at making you dinner out of what you've got in the fridge. Can be all kinds of things. And a really useful feature here is that you can just name the chats. Keeps your ChatGPT interface nice and tidy. You know exactly what you want. If you're going back and revisiting a chat, you can get straight to it, nice and easy.
Thanks, Matt. I think there's some really brilliant tips there. I need to take a leaf out of your book as well, because my file management on ChatGPT is looking very untidy these days. And I think, like you say, the fact that it's learning, I need to put all my math stuff in one. And yeah, that is just really, really good advice. Okay, last sort of application really that we wanted to show you is thinking about assessment for learning. So ChatGPT can help you judge whether a lesson has been effective by giving you questions to assess student understanding, to sort of, help with that sort of on the spot AFL during your lesson. So in this example, and remember we've got our custom instructions behind this, we asked what students need to know about a specific topic according to the national curriculum. So I'm talking here about year 7, chemistry. What do they need to know about this according to the national curriculum? So it's given me a little bit of an outline here. And then I'm going on to then say, well, what questions could I ask students to test their understanding? And again, I'm sort of starting with that umbrella really of sort of starting quite broad and then, sort of getting more specific really with it. So just as a sort of guide, and this is not the first sort of iteration I would accept of this, but, it's given us some questions that we can start with, and maybe we might want to then pick out 3 of the questions and say, I really like these. Could you elaborate on these further for me? Could you think of different types of questions that I could use to assess the pupil's understanding? We might want, a range of open questions, closed questions. We want to think about building up that sort of expertise in question level asking. So that's something really nice and broad that you can do, depending on the topic. Another thing that you can do, and this is going back to some of Matt's really great advice, is we're not going to be asking it to plan a whole lesson for us, because it's just, not going to give us great results. But what if we've already sort of thought about a section of our lesson plan that we're really pleased with and that we really like? This is a part of the lesson plan, our performer that we use here at Tutor Trust, and we split our main part of our lesson into main A, B and C, and sort of follow the gradual release of responsibility model with this. So main B would be that guiding and scaffolding the pupil's practice, and while they're doing that and potentially working together in pairs or in a group, you'd want to be thinking about, how can I assess that learning? So we could copy and paste that section of the lesson plan into ChatGPT and ask it to generate 2 ways, for example, to assess what the pupils have learned from that activity. And you might want to be really specific and say, I don't just want it to be questions, I want it to be other opportunities. I want to use a quiz. I want to think about how I develop my use of the mini whiteboards. I want to develop oracy. I want to see how they discuss this with each other. So again, thinking about that, prepare, giving it the parameters with which you want it to come to this decision for you. Okay, so we're coming to the end because we want to make sure we've got time for you to hang about and do some Q&A. So Matt, let's go over these last few slides dead quick.
Absolutely. So we've given you three really useful strategies to use when using ChatGPT for lesson planning. Here's some more sort of promising ways to use ChatGPT, again, from the Bain pilot guidance. So finding activity in seconds, activity ideas, sorry. Remember, ask for more than you need. Building your own mock exams and craft model answers. It's fantastic for this, a real time saver. Just make sure that you know the answers to the questions. Create step-by-step examples and get effective explanations. Again, it's really fantastic for doing that. Ready-made practice questions. Adapting your materials to work for your class. I mean, that's the whole adaptive instruction section that I spoke about. Avoiding misconceptions and testing student understanding. This is a really, really, really good one. The whole pilot program found this to be a really strong use of AI, because often it can be really difficult as sort of the more knowledgeable one to think of the misconceptions that your students might have, because you already know the content, right? ChatGPT can be really good at looking at it from your student's perspective. And some other ways you could use ChatGPT, less reliably, but definitely uses to be tested. Lesson plans, that's meaning, like we've sort of alluded to today, a whole lesson plan at once. If you're doing it in a sort of methodical way, I would say that's a lot more reliable. ChatGPT is an information source, marking and feedback, and teacher admin. Again, all things to be tested. I'd be very interested to find out how people get on with this if they do use it.
Brill, thanks, Matt. So just quick summary, really. 3 outcomes that we hope we've kind of imparted in what we've shown you today, that we can get some improved efficiency and accuracy with our lesson planning, a bit of real-time adaptation, and potentially enhance student engagement through those interactive lesson plans. So really,